Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight. We're delighted to present readings of the 4 poems chosen for our annual collaboration with the Academy of American Poets and their Poem a Day feature and newsletter. I'm Susan Harris, the editorial director of Words Without Borders. This year, our judge, the National Book Award-winning poet and translator Arthur Sze, selected 4 poems from our extensive archives. Juggler, by the Philippines poet Mesándel Virtusio Arguelles, translated from Filipino by Kristine Ong Muslim. Doppelganger, by Puerto Rico's Xavier Valcárcel, translated from Spanish by Roque Raquel Salas Rivera. Everything Shimmers, by Denmark's Naja Marie Aidt, translated from Danish by Susanna Nied. And A Moving Grove, by Ukraine's Iryna Shuvalova, translated from Ukrainian by Uilleam Blacker. We'll open with Arthur Sze reading some of his own translations from Chinese. Then we'll hear each poem in the original and the English translation, introduced by Arthur's judges' citations, and followed by some quick questions for the authors and translators. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A with your questions, which you may post in the chat or send directly to Anna at Words Without Borders. A few quick details before we get started. Nina will post these messages in the chat as I go. Please feel free to message Anna, the meeting's main host, directly if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about Zoom. We will be recording this event and publishing the conversation on our website next week, so you can revisit it there. We will be muting everyone except for our participants to ensure that we can hear them. Just because we're all on mute does not mean you can't offer your reactions to what you'll be hearing. Please use the chat window at right to do so, and to ask any questions you'd like to have answered during our Q&A that will follow. You can also use the reactions button, where you can use emoji to interact with the ceremony over the course of the evening. We'll have closed captioning available during this event. To turn it on, just click the arrow next to CC on your bottom toolbar and select Show Subtitles. You'll notice on the top right of the Zoom application window, you have the option to toggle between the gallery view and speaker view. We suggest speaker view so that you can see the main speakers at all times. Finally, we suggest you sign up for our newsletter, which is the best way to keep up with all the excitement going on at Words Without Borders. Now I'm pleased to introduce Arthur Sze. Arthur has published 11 books of poetry, including The Glass Constellation, New and Collected Poems from Copper Canyon Press in 2021, and Sightlines, which received the 2019 National Book Award for Poetry. His new collection, The Silk Dragon II, Translations of Chinese Poetry, is forthcoming from Copper Canyon in the spring of 2024. He is the recipient of many honors, including a 2022 Ruth Lilly Poetry Prize, a Shelley Memorial Award, and the Jackson Poetry Prize. He is a professor emeritus at the Institute of American Indian Arts and lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Arthur.
Thank you, Susan. I want to begin just with a few preliminary thank yous. I want to thank Susan Harris, Karen Phillips, and Anna Weber for making this reading possible. And I think the collaboration between Words Without Borders, the Academy of American Poets, and the Brooklyn Book Festival is really fantastic. And for those of you who are international poets and translators, I want you to know that each Saturday, one of your poems is being published, and there are over 400,000 subscribers in the United States. So your poems are reaching many new readers. And it's such a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to curate the poems. I was looking for poems that seemed fresh and original, that had a precise use of language, but also a singular vision. And I also feel like I was looking at the 4 poems this afternoon. All of your poems have a sense of openness to mystery and a sense of surprise, which I really appreciate. I'm going to just share 3 short translations from the Chinese, and I'm only going to read the English translations. The first poem is by a Tang Dynasty poet, Wang Wei, Bamboo Grove. I sit alone in the secluded bamboo grove and play the zither and whistle along. In the deep forest, no one knows. The bright moon comes to shine on me. And another classical Chinese poem with a lot of clarity. It's called Snow on the River by Liu Chengyuan. Over thousands of mountains, birds no longer fly. Over 10,000 paths, no more trace of humans. On a lone boat, an old man in a bamboo hat and palm coat, alone fishing in the cold, snowy river. So those classical poems have a lot of clarity and precision and focus. And I'm going to end my bit of translations with a poem by a wonderful contemporary Chinese poet, Wang Jiaxin, and the poem is called Ice Anglers. In the reservoir near my house, when winter comes, you can see some ice anglers squatting there in old army overcoats. From a distance, they look like crows scattered in the snow. They crouch there as if time has stopped. They go there just so fish can breathe under a single ray of light. The fish swim hesitantly up to the holes. The ice angler's ecstasy is to see living creatures thrash their tails in pain on ice until blood seeps from their gills, staining red the piles of chiseled ice. These are the most frightening sights I can imagine. I turned away from that embankment. I tried to think it was just a chance encounter in my stroll. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Those were beautiful. We'll now hear from Mesándel Virtusio Arguelles and Kristine Ong Muslim. Mesándel teaches literature and creative writing at De La Salle University in Manila. English translations by Kristine Ong Muslim of his poems have appeared or are forthcoming in numerous publications, including Asymptote, Words Without Borders, Copper Nickel, and Poetry London. The recipient of several national awards and writing fellowships, Arguelles has written more than 20 books, including most recently Ang Ameng Lukot Amin, published just this year. Kristine Ong Muslim is the author of The Drone Outside, Black Arcadia, Meditations of a Beast, Butterfly Dream, Age of Blight, and several other books of fiction and poetry. She co-edited numerous anthologies of fiction, including Destination, SEA 2050 AD, Urat, Best Contemporary Stories in Translation from the Philippines, and the British Fantasy Award-winning People of Color, Destroy, Science Fiction. Her translation of Amado Anthony G. Mendoza III's novel, Book of the Damned, won a 2023 Panheim Grant. She is also the translator of 9 books by Filipino authors Mesándel Virtusio Arguelles, Rogelio Braga, and Marlon Hakla. Mesándel will now read his poem, Juggler.
Hello everyone, good evening, and magandang umaga mula sa Pilipinas. I would like to once again thank Susan and Anna and Words Without Borders for the invitation. I am deeply honored to be with you this morning. I'm reading my poem in the original Filipino. Juggler. Salitan ng 7 bola sa kanyang palad at sa hangin. May presisyon sa pagitang tahak ng bola ang landas o ng landas ang bola sa ritmong nasa talukap ng alanganin, lagi sa pagkahulog. Saan inaaral ang pasya ng pandama sa sandali ng pag-itsa at pagsalo, sa pag-iisa sa pag-iensayo o sa pag-iensayo sa pag-iisa. Alin ang nasa kamay habang walang humpay ang musyon at emosyon. Wari nila, lalang niya ang grabidad. At sa minsang pagkurap ay mangangalaglag ang bola. Halos nawawala ang kanilang puso sa lugar. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize, I made a mistake. We intended to have Arthur read his introductory remarks before Mesándel read his poem. Arthur, I wonder if you could read your comment on Juggler now so that we could hear it before Kristine reads her introduction. And I apologize again.
Sure. Here's my citation. When a juggler tosses 7 balls in the air, the juggler and the continuous motion of the balls becomes a vehicle to explore philosophical issues, so that when to hurl and when to catch is much more than surface appearance. Juggler is an arresting poem that explores implications of motion and emotion, isolation and connection. And in Kristine Ong Muslim's lean translation, the stillness at the end reverberates.
Kristine, thank you, Arthur.
Hello, this is my translation of Mesándel Virtusio Arguelles, Juggler. Slapping 7 balls with his palm and with air, precision inhabits the gap between the ball's trajectory and its anticipated pace at the brink of hesitation, the arc of descent. How does one grasp making sense of timing, when to hurl and when to catch? Is it when one rehearses alone or when one rehearses being alone? Which one holds when there is no break from motion and from emotion? They thought he makes gravity. Then in the blink of an eye, oh, the balls are dropped. They have yet to stop holding their breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristine. Mesándel, would you like to say anything about the poem or its context? Again, because this is an archive selection, I know it's been several years since you wrote it.
Yes. Thank you, Susan. Yes, that is correct. No? This poem is included in my second book published in 2004. So that's kind of old. The book is titled Ilahas or Peral, also translated by Kristine. The book primarily talks about the idea of salvation, both in the religious and non-religious context. And as such, most of the poems in the collection explore or bring up philosophical concerns as can be seen in, or as can be observed in the poem Juggler.
Very good. Thank you, Mesándel. Kristine, was there a particularly challenging point for you in this poem?
Getting the meaning for meaning equivalence line up with the real lines in the source poem. So I think I found that difficult. Also, the line cuts need to be, I have to make them as fluid as they were in the original. So I think I was able to do that too. Mesándel's poems are almost like They're always baked in a sense of loneliness. So I hope I was able to carry that loneliness into English. I think that's it.
Definitely. Thank you, Mesándel. Thank you, Kristine. We'll now hear from Xavier Valcárcel and Roque Raquel Salas Rivera. Xavier Valcárcel is a Puerto Rican writer, visual artist, and cultural activist. Along with the Puerto Rican poet and translator Nicole Delgado, he founded Ataraya Cartonera, San Juan, 2009, the first Cartonera project in the Caribbean. He has published 7 books of poetry, and his work has been included in a variety of anthologies and translated into English, German, and Portuguese. Roque Raquel Salas Rivera is a Puerto Rican poet, translator, and editor. His honors include being named Poet Laureate of Philadelphia, the New Voices Award from the Festival de la Palabra, the Lambda Literary Award for Transgender Poetry, the inaugural Ambrosio Prize, the Laureate Fellowship, and a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship to translate the poetry of his grandfather, Sotero Rivera Aviles. He is the author of 6 full-length poetry books, which have been longlisted and shortlisted for the National Book Award, the Pan America Open Book Award, and the CLMP Firecracker Award. Arthur will read his citation for Xavier's poem and Roque's translation.
In the symbolic narrative of this haunting poem, Doppelganger, the speaker is sent packing by solitude and discovers an unexpected fascination and commitment to nurture an egg, the one thing left after everything else has been stripped away. In this spare translation, Roque Raquel Salas Rivera uses a series of simple, declarative statements to keep the mystery propulsive and alive.
Thank you, Arthur. Xavier?
Hola, hola. Hello, everyone from Puerto Rico. Thank you for this invitation to be part of this event, wonderful event. So I'm going to read the Doppelganger in the original version, in español. Doppelganger. No vine a la soledad. Ella empacó mi maleta y dijo, vete. Puso un huevo en mi maleta, puso levadura en mi maleta, puso sal en mi maleta, harina, azúcar y agua tibia. Vine a casa de mi madre a dormir días. Cerré todas las puertas, me quité la ropa y los relojes, dejé la maleta sobre el suelo sin abrirla. Ahora, hambriento, rebusco con los ojos lo que traje. Se han llevado todo. Queda solo el huevo ahí intacto a un lado de la cama y siento ante el espejo el compromiso raro de cuidarlo. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. Roque.
Doppelganger. I did not come to solitude. She packed my suitcase and said, go. She put an egg in my suitcase. She put leavening in my suitcase. She put salt in my suitcase, flour, sugar, and warm water. I came to my mother's house to sleep for days. I closed all the doors. I took off my clothes, my watches. I left the suitcase on the floor unopened. Now hungry, with my eyes, I rummage through the things I brought. They've taken everything. All that's left is the egg, there, intact beside the bed. And when facing the mirror, I feel strangely committed to its care.
Thank you, Roque. Xavier, would you like to talk about the context in which this poem was written? Oh, could you unmute yourself?
Sorry. Yes, some words about this poem is included in my poetry book. The title is El Deber del Pan, was published in 2013. So basically, it's a tribute in poetry to women and men and people who have lost their lives in relationships, although specifically loving men. This poetry book is a Caribbean tribute swollen with tears, flour, beer, and gasoline. So yes, El Deber del Pan.
Thank you, Xavier. Roque, what did you find exciting, difficult, challenging in this translation?
I think just probably the ending because it's so sort of on point, right? And it feels very much like complete and round, like the egg. So I was trying to capture that and move it into the English.
Very good. Wonderful poem, wonderful translation. Thank you both so much. We'll now hear from Naja Aidt. Naja was unable to join us tonight, but she did record both the original and the translation since her translator is unable to join us. Originally from Greenland, Naja Marie Aidt is a Danish poet and author with nearly 30 works in various genres, mostly poetry, to her name. She is also a playwright and screenwriter and has published children's books and translated fiction and poetry from Swedish and Norwegian. She has received numerous honors, including the Swedish Academy's Nordic Prize, the Danish Critics' Choice Award, the Danish Art Foundation's Award for Lifelong Service, and the Nordic nation's most prestigious literary prize, the Nordic Council's Literature Prize. When Death Takes Something From You, Give It Back was longlisted for the National Book Awards for Translated Literature. Susanna Nied, the translator, is an American writer and translator. She has been honored with the Landon Translation Award of the Academy of American Poets and has twice been named a finalist for the PEN Award for Poetry in Translation in 2005 and again in 2012. Her translations of the Danish poet Inger Christensen are published by New Directions. Arthur, would you like to share your citation for Naja's poem?
Thank you. In Naja Marie Aidt's excerpt from Everything Shimmers, a whirlwind of a moment unfurls, and a reader, listener experiences a conflation of color and image with smell and sound. And the little call to waken the sleepers is also a call to awaken and see the world with fresh eyes. In Susanna Nied's energetic translation that embodies shifting modes of diction, this experience culminates in the startling marzipanescent body at the end.
Thank you, Arthur.
Så pludselig bøgeskov helt grønt bag de blundende øjne. En hind springer over den stampede jordvej, har lugter af syre og mos og kinden mod bark. Solregn mellem stammer. Jeg er hjemme og hører Østersøen slå mod store sten langt borte. Er jeg hvilende som en fe eller en heks i skovbundens dufte. Vi kan så let glemme, at vi er dem vi er, at vi er. Men der skal bare et lille signal til at vække den slumrende, som nu i skoven. For hør nu, er det ikke sang og bæreklang, der lyder i de grønne sale. Jo, et gildesørme for barnet i sit 17. år, der aldrig har haft det bedre og aldrig får det bedre. Verden blinker, alting ufatteligt muligt, mens et kraftspring og en ny, men ikke forstyrrende følsomhed har slået sig ned midt i den uimodståeligt marcipan-emne krop. Then suddenly beech woods, all green behind the dozing eyes. A deer leaps across the forest road, scents of acid and moss and cheek against bark. Sun rain between trunks. I'm home and hear the Baltic Sea crash against big rocks far away, and I rest like a fairy or a witch in the sweet smells of the forest floor. We can so easily forget what we are, who we are, that we are, but it takes only a little call to waken the sleepers, as now in the forest. For listen, isn't that song and the chiming of goblets sounding in the green chambers? Yes, by golly, a celebration for the child in his 17th year, who never has been happier and never will be happier. The world shimmers, everything unimaginably possible, while a handspring and a new but not disturbing sensitivity have settled in the middle of his irresistibly marzipan-essent body.
Thank you, Anna, for playing Naya's recording. I hope that you all caught that marvelous word, marzipanescent, which is such a gorgeous, apt creation on Naya's part. And a reminder that you can read all of the poems that we're hearing tonight in both the original and the translations in Words Without Borders, where they were originally published. You will find the links in the chat. We'll now hear from Iryna Shuvalova and Uilleam Blacker. Arthur, would you like to share your citation?
Iryna Shuvalova's poem is a signal response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and it is not bound by literal facts. The insistent call to go and don't come back starts with literal loss, but it leads quickly to larger dimensions, to mythic and even apocalyptic dimensions of the end of a world, the world, through the title. Uilleam Blacker's translation eschews punctuation and capitalization and signals another kind of ending of norms.
Iryna.
Hello, thanks for having me here today. Thanks to Words Without Borders, thanks to Arthur Sze for his selection. It's a pleasure to read for you. A moving grove. Їдь, тікай. Поки можеш, їдь, тікай. Купуй квитки на останній потяг води, яка, відступаючи, оголює набережні, бордюри, тротуари, анатомію жилового міста, яке лежить голе й чуже, як чоловік у твоєму ліжку. Поки можеш, їдь, тікай. Збирай свої пожитки. Все, що твоє, забирай з собою. Прикушені губи, розбиті коліна, надтріснутий баняк голови, з якого помалу цідиться пам'ять, а все, що можеш залишити, залишай. Нічні світла у вікнах. Неба, любе беззахисне горло, запах підземки, свинець, ріки. Їдь і не повертайся. Не сумнівайся, саме так провалюються в бездонний колодязь тіла, кидають себе, як гребінь, через плече, засівають собою поле, аби зростити військо. Саме так голка проходить крізь вушко голки, саме так ліс приступає до стін. починає тремтіти. Thank you.
Thank you, Iryna. That was gorgeous. Uilleam.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you so much for the opportunity to read my translation for you this evening. A Moving Grove. Go, escape while you can. Go, escape. Buy tickets for the last water train, which as it subsides reveals curbs, pavements, the riverside, the anatomy of the sinewy city that lies naked and unfamiliar like a man in your bed. Go, escape while you can. Take all your belongings, everything that's yours, split lips, cut knees, the cracked jar of a head from which memory slowly seeps, and all you can leave, just leave behind. The evening lights in the windows, the beloved exposed throat of the sky, the smell of the subway, the lead of the river. Go and don't come back. Have no doubts. That's how it is to fall into the bottomless well of a body, to throw yourself like a comb over your shoulder, to sow yourself across a field so that a host of warriors might grow. This is how the needle passes through the needle's eye. This is how the forest shall come up to the walls and start to tremble.
Wonderful. I'm sorry. I've been so eager today to hear everyone's readings that I've skipped too many things, and I realize I forgot. I neglected to read Iryna and William's bios, so I will do that now out of order. Again, with apologies. Iryna, sorry, I got some. Iryna Shuvalova is a poet and scholar from Kiev and the author of 5 winning books of poetry, prize-winning books of poetry, including Pray to the Empty Wells. Her 5th and most recent book of poetry, Stone Orchard Woods, has been named Book of the Year by Ukraine's Lit Accent Prize for Literature and received the special prize of the Lviv UNESCO City of Literature Book Award. She holds a PhD in Slavonic Studies from the University of Cambridge, where she was a Gates Cambridge Scholar, and an MA in Comparative Literature from Dartmouth College, where she was a Fulbright Scholar. Uilleam Blacker is a lecturer in the School of Slavonic and East European Studies at University College London. He has published widely on Ukrainian, Polish, and Russian literature, and has translated the work of several contemporary Ukrainian writers. Again, sorry about that out of order reading. Iryna, asking you about the context in which this poem was written seems both a terribly idiotic question, but I wonder if you would like to talk about what it was like writing poetry under these circumstances. The poem was composed last year.
Actually, this poem wasn't. That's a strange thing about it. I mean, obviously, this poem does not predate the war because the war has been going on since 2014. But it does predate the full-scale invasion. So we have seen massive displacement of people before 2022, but obviously that was a point when the scales have tipped, and I think the whole world really saw what we were seeing before that. I think for me, this poem is, I was having this conversation with someone about it after reading, and they said, in one poem, you go from this very small things, very everyday things, suddenly to this big mythical scale, like how does it feel to you? Why are you doing that? And I thought about that, and I felt that this is what war or any kind of, catastrophe does, that it reminds us that, big things, and small, seemingly mundane things, they're not different things. That perhaps some of the biggest things are those tiny, everyday seemingly mundane experiences. This is what gets taken from us first, and this is what we always miss the most. So I guess this is one of the things that this poem explores.
Exactly. William, what was challenging about this poem? It's always wonderful to hear the poem in the original, because I think you can hear the urgency of it in a way that, and of course to hear it read in English, but to hear them together, the two certainly reinforces that effect. William, what challenges were there?
I think one of the main challenges with these poems is the fact that Iryna writes without the punctuation. And that's obviously to facilitate that kind of rhythm and that urgency, like you say, like the poem just kind of flows, it kind of tumbles, and that's deliberate, and that's like very, very much key to like just her voice. But what that does is it creates these ambiguities between, so you don't always know where a clause ends and begins. You don't always know what the relationship between this verb and the object and the nouns on either side are, which is where's the object, where's the subject, and these things all start to become kind of flow into one. So I have to try and pin them down and interpret, but I also have to keep the ambiguity. So that's really a challenge. But luckily, I have Iryna on hand to answer all my questions and correct all my misinterpretations. She's very patient, so but it's a real joy to work with these poems.
And misinterpretations are very few.
This reminds me of, this raises an interesting question. I think, or this notion of checking the misinterpretations, which I'm sure are very limited with the author. I think tonight we do have 3 pairs of authors and translators who do collaborate regularly and frequently. And I wonder, William and Iryna, since you're up now, if you'd like to start, how did your working relationship begin? What was the prompt for that?
I can't really remember exactly how it began, but I was aware of Iryna's work because I work on contemporary Ukrainian literature, and I love translating poetry, and I always, from the moment I read it, I thought that would be really cool to translate her poetry. So, and then somehow we just got talking about it at some point or over emails, and it just kind of like, let's try. And yeah, so when we've done quite a few now. Absolutely.
Kristine and Mesándel, if we could go back to you on this topic. And again, a reminder to the audience, we welcome your questions. Just drop them into the chat, and we'll be happy to raise them with the participants. Kristine and Mesándel, I think you've been collaborating for some time now. How did you first start working together?
I asked him if he wanted me, if he'd allow me to translate his work, and I'm happy he did. All the authors I'm translating, I'm the one who proactively asked them. I don't want to be asked, right? Do you want to translate my work? I'm probably going to say no. I will have to do the two things. So yeah, that's how it started.
And what is
now I'm translating his first novel. So
that's so you are switching genres even.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And Roque and Xavier, what is your collaboration like? Do you work over email? Do you meet personally? Do you talk on the phone? Do you how do you handle it?
Well, we're in the same room right now because
well,
so we had didn't have internet and came over. So I'd say our working relationship is first a working friendship, and then I'm sort of like texting Xavier inappropriately throughout the day. Is that about right?
Yeah.
And I
But
think,
Raquel, Roque is an excellent coach. So I really enjoy this relationship about, I mean, like friend, but like translator and poet, and just it's amazing. I mean, and the work that he did, I mean, I like it.
very
Yeah,
good.
I think there's mutual admiration first as poets, and that helps a lot because there's trust there that I'm gonna care how it sounds.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, we have three very successful collaborations here. We do have a question from the audience. This is a question for the translators. This is an excellent question and will certainly resonate with all of you, I think. For the translators, what keeps you going as a translator? I translated once, felt burnout, and promised myself to never translate again. But I think it's an interesting point. What does motivate you? Uilleam, you're a professor. You certainly have a full teaching load. What motivates you to continue translating? What motivated you to start? What motivated you to continue?
I think it's when you learn languages, it's kind of, to me, it was just like the most logical thing to do translation, to use that skill, you know, to go between the languages. And it was something that I enjoyed when I was learning languages, and I just wanted to keep doing it. And for me, especially doing longer works, you know, like prose and so on, it's kind of, it can be kind of a burden on top of other things that you're doing, but the poetry, not at all. Like, I do the poetry as a way of relaxing, of, you know, just like unwinding. It's like actually such a pleasure. So it actually doesn't stress me out. Not the poetry. It actually helps me kind of to, I think, just relax and switch off from other things.
And Kristine, you write so much of your own poetry, as what you have many other projects going on. How are you motivated to translate? Oop, there we are.
Same with Uilleam. It's a pleasurable activity for me, and I am now gravitating towards long prose work, novels, because that's where the money is. But poetry translation is still very much a labor of love, and also good for my mental health. Yeah, translation.
And Roque, and of course, translation is always a labor of love. I think that's a given. Although I did hear a translator on one Zoom event, who was speaking very quickly, referred to it as a love of labor, which was not far off the mark, I think. Roque, obviously a labor of love for you too, but what else motivates you? I mean, you are also handling many other projects, including your own poetry.
Sorry, I just had it on mute. I was maybe 18 in Borders in San Juan, and I read a translation of Federico Garcia Lorca's Aurora in New York, and I said, "Oh, that's a terrible translation." And I think that's what motivated me to start translating a translation I didn't actually like very much, to be honest.
Okay. This is an interesting question, and I don't know if we have many questions for the translators tonight. Actually, though, I want to. This segues nicely from our conversation about collaboration. Obviously, all three of you translators are working with authors who speak and read English and are fluent, and obviously, which is what allows you to collaborate in the way that you do. One of our audience members asks, what is that like, as opposed to working with an author who is not fluent in English, who cannot judge what you do? William, you've translated so many Ukrainian writers. What has your experience been?
I mean, I have translated some writers, at least one who didn't have much English. And I mean, I guess that's, in some ways, that just gives you a bit more, space to do what you want to do, because they're not going to be, interfering. But it definitely helps, I think, when the author can read it and discuss it with you, and Iryna is also a translator, and she translates into English. So why in the world she wants me to translate her into English, I don't know, but maybe you could speak to that. I don't know, but it's but you do translate into English.
I just feel that yeah, it's the alienness of language is always both a barrier and in a sense a help. I mean, I think for me, I'm just trying to think. I don't know. I don't have anything to add to that. I just feel that language, any language, is always a barrier and a help. And so whether it's the absence of that common language with the language you're translating into, or its presence, like, it's gonna stand in the way. Either way. But yeah, Uilleam just does it so much better than I could do. So that's why I let him do it. That's very logical.
Wonderful to have the choice. Roque, have you worked with authors who do not have English?
Yes. A lot of Puerto Rican authors don't speak English. So, but in my experience, they just ask questions either way, right? Because even if they don't speak English, they learn enough to ask good questions, which is what we often do. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything noticeable or notable in that process, but honestly, I think with most authors here, it's a matter of trust, sort of trusting that there isn't sort of an extractivist relationship with the translator. And since many of them already sort of know who I am, there's trust is often built in to the relationship. I think that's the linguistic challenge, is building trust.
Yes, the trust. Kristine, how about you? When you've worked you've translated work by authors who are not English speaking?
Everyone in the Philippines speaks a little bit of English.
And all of your authors have been,
They're proficient. So
ah.
Collaboration is very smooth.
Right. Okay. We have time for one final question, and this is actually a question for everyone, I think. Someone has asked about finding the balance between translating and writing one's original work, and obviously translation is original as well, but you know that what we're referring to, and how do you approach each practice differently? That is obviously a very complex question. Iryna, would you like to start?
I'll try. I think I can relate to what Uilleam said about this, and I think others agreed as well. Not necessarily relaxing, but kind of the healing, maybe I would even call it, aspect of translation. Just kind of this act of carrying something over from one place to the other can be almost a ritual of sorts. And I think with translation, it's a kind of a calming ritual for me. But I mean, as poets, we kind of do the same thing, right? We also take something and we carry it from one place to the other. But when I'm carrying it as a poet, that's not very calming or relaxing. I just feel that it's not about the level of responsibility, but just about the level of whether it's going to happen or not. Because as a poet, I feel that I can just fail completely. I feel that as a translator, I have the time, I have that space to make it happen, you know, the getting across. But as a poet, I think I can just never get there. And that always keeps me tense. So I guess those two things balance themselves out. That's why I think both are kind of very important and very essential for me. I think that's how I would describe it.
Roque, is that your experience as well?
Well, I'd say my last 4 books are books that are in both languages and are self-translations. So it's a little different because I'm constantly translating both outside of myself and in myself. I will say that some of the Iryna speaks of that kind of a stressfulness. I think there's like a tension for me in poetry as well. I wish I felt more relaxed in poetry, but I do feel a little bit of that same tension that in translation and in poetry, maybe at varying degrees.
And Kristine, how is it for you?
Mesándel should speak for us in regarding the question on balancing translation.
Yes.
And it's also a translator. So Mesándel, we need you. Can you spotlight it?
I don't know. I do not really do literary translation, and when I do translation, it's for something else. I just try to find the time to do one and then the other as much as I can. And Kristine is a very good poet and fictionist, so I have complete trust in her skills and talent as a poet and translator. So we have a very smooth collaboration. That's it.
Okay. Well, I think we could continue this conversation all night, but we must start wrapping up. So thank you so much to all of you, our readers. Thank you so much to our judge, Arthur Sze, and thanks to all of you in the audience for joining us. As a final reminder, you can visit our website daily at wordswithoutborders.org for the latest in writing from around the world. To stay abreast of all things WWB, sign up for our newsletter via the link in the chat. We'll send you all an email in the coming days with a link to rewatch this event. If you'll be in New York on October 25th, we hope you'll join us for our annual gala, where we'll be celebrating our 20th anniversary, if you can imagine. If you're elsewhere, we hope you'll join us in November 2nd for our virtual gala, where you can join us and a group of dazzling authors and translators to celebrate the power of international literature. The link to RSVP to the virtual gala is in the chat, and we'll share that information in our follow-up email as well. Thanks again to all of you for a marvelous reading and wonderful conversation. And good night, or as the case may be, good day to all of you.
Thank you.